The submarine Periscope sits in a pile of salvaged junk at RAF Thorpe Abbotts, its precision optics still intact despite the torpedo damage that sank U-247 off the Norwegian coast 6 months earlier. To most people walking past the base's salvage yard, it's just another piece of German equipment destined for the scrap metal drive. But to Staff Sergeant Eddie Kowalski, tail gunner on the B-17 Devil's Advocate, it represents something entirely different. He sees magnification. He sees precision. He sees the solution to a problem that has been keeping him awake since his 15th mission over Schweinfurt. When German fighters came at his bomber from angles that his standard periscope sight couldn't track, when he watched American boys die because their defensive guns couldn't hit targets moving faster than military doctrine had ever imagined possible, Eddie pulls the periscope from the scrap pile with the careful attention of someone who recognizes precision engineering when he sees it. The German optics are superior to anything the Army Air Forces has issued to tail gunners. The magnification power triple what standard equipment provides. The target tracking capability smooth and responsive in ways that American military contractors seem incapable of achieving under wartime production pressure. What Eddie sees in this discarded piece of enemy equipment is not just better technology, but the possibility of transforming his B-17's tailgun position from defensive liability into offensive weapon, from last resort into precision instrument, capable of engaging German fighters at ranges and angles that might actually prevent attacks rather than simply responding to them after the damage is already done. This is not the story of authorized military innovation flowing through proper channels and approved modification procedures. This is the story of field expedience meeting combat necessity, of a frustrated gunner who decided that survival mattered more than regulations, of unauthorized modification that would eventually transform aerial warfare in ways that Pentagon planners never anticipated and initially tried to prevent. This is the story of how stupid ideas from enlisted men sometimes solve problems that officers and engineers cannot address through official channels and established doctrine. The European Air War in 1943 operates according to mathematical principles that no one wants to acknowledge officially, but everyone understands privately. American bombers are dying faster than American factories can replace them. German fighters are evolving tactically faster than Allied defensive systems can adapt to counter their new approaches. The carefully calculated formation flying that supposedly provides mutual protection has become predictable enough for experienced Luftwaffe pilots to exploit with devastating efficiency. And the defensive gunnery that was supposed to make unescorted daylight bombing feasible has proven inadequate against fighters that attack from angles, speeds, and distances that standard equipment cannot handle effectively. Eddie Kowalski understands these mathematics better than most people because his position in the tail gun turret provides front-row seats to aerial combat that most crew members experience as confusion, noise, and terror rather than tactical education. From his isolated position at the rear of the bomber, he can observe the complete sequence of fighter attacks, can see how German pilots approach their targets, can identify the specific weaknesses in American defensive arrangements that enemy pilots exploit with increasing sophistication and devastating effect. What he sees is a systematic failure of American gunnery technology to address the realities of modern aerial combat, where split-second precision matters more than volume of fire, where early detection determines survival more than rapid response. The standard periscope sight issued to tail gunners in 1943 represents the state of American military technology circa 1940, designed for combat scenarios that existed before German fighters learned to attack in coordinated waves, before Focke-Wulf 190s could dive at speeds that reduced engagement windows to seconds rather than minutes, before Messerschmitt 109s developed the tactical discipline to maintain formation integrity while executing complex attack patterns that exploited specific blind spots in American defensive arrangements. The equipment works adequately for training exercises conducted at predictable speeds, against cooperative targets following predetermined flight paths. It fails catastrophically under actual combat conditions where everything happens faster than training anticipated and nothing develops according to established procedures. Eddie's frustration with inadequate equipment has been building through 15 missions of watching German fighters approach his bomber from angles that his periscope cannot track effectively, of engaging targets he cannot see clearly enough to hit consistently, of feeling helpless while enemy pilots exploit technological advantages that superior American industrial capacity should have eliminated months earlier. The Periscope sight provides magnification barely sufficient for identifying aircraft type at engagement range, tracking capability too slow for following high-speed targets through complex maneuvers, target acquisition delay too long for engaging fighters that appear and disappear within seconds of detection. But the German submarine periscope represents different engineering priorities, different tactical requirements, different solutions to the fundamental problem of engaging fast-moving targets under challenging visibility conditions. Submarine periscopes must provide superior magnification for identifying distant surface vessels, exceptional tracking capability for following targets through complex maneuvers, rapid target acquisition for engaging opportunities that exist for limited duration, the optical technology that allows U-boat commanders to identify and engage. Allied shipping from extended range under poor visibility conditions is exactly what Eddie needs to transform his tailgun position from reactive defense into proactive offense. The modification process begins in the base machine shop during off-duty hours, when Eddie can work on unofficial projects without attracting attention from officers who might question the wisdom of installing unauthorized equipment on operational aircraft. The mechanical interface between German periscope and American gun mount requires custom fabrication, precise measurement, patient trial and error adjustment that consumes weeks of evening and weekend work. Eddie enlists help from Staff Sergeant Tony Martinez, the crew chief whose mechanical expertise with B-17 systems makes him the obvious choice for technical consultation on modifications that must integrate seamlessly with existing equipment without compromising aircraft systems or flight characteristics. The engineering challenge involves more than simply mounting German optics on American gun turrets. The periscope's superior magnification requires recalibration of sight alignment, adjustment of ranging calculations, modification of targeting procedures that crews have trained to execute automatically under combat stress. The enhanced tracking capability demands new techniques for following high-speed targets, different approaches to lead calculation, revised methods for engaging multiple targets in rapid sequence. Every aspect of tailgunner technique must be reconsidered and potentially modified to exploit the technological advantages that the German periscope provides. Initial testing occurs during training flights over the English countryside, where Eddie can evaluate the modified sight system against simulated targets without risking operational security or aircraft safety. The improvements are immediately obvious. Target identification range increases from roughly 800 yards to over 1,500 yards, providing early warning that allows defensive preparations before German fighters reach effective engagement distance. Target tracking capability improves dramatically, allowing sustained engagement of high-speed targets through complex maneuvers that would defeat standard equipment. Target acquisition time decreases significantly, enabling rapid engagement of multiple targets in sequence rather than focusing on single fighters while others attack unmolested. But the most significant advantage involves precision rather than speed. The German periscope's superior optics allow Eddie to identify specific aircraft types at extended range, to recognize individual markings that indicate pilot experience levels, to observe tactical formations that reveal attack intentions before those attacks develop fully. This intelligence capability transforms tailgunner responsibility from purely defensive reaction to tactical reconnaissance that benefits entire bomber formations, providing early warning and attack prediction that can save multiple aircraft rather than simply protecting individual bombers. The first combat test occurs during a mission to Bremen, when Eddie's modified sight system detects incoming German fighters at range sufficient for radio warning to other bombers in the formation. The enhanced magnification allows identification of aircraft types and probable attack vectors 2 minutes before standard equipment would detect the incoming threat, providing time for formation adjustments that disrupt German tactical plans and reduce the effectiveness of coordinated attacks. During the subsequent engagement, Eddie's precision shooting downs 2 Focke-Wulf 190s at ranges that would have been impossible with standard equipment, demonstrating the combat effectiveness of unauthorized modification that military bureaucracy would never have approved through official channels. Word of Eddie's Periscope modification spreads through the bomber groups with the rapid efficiency that characterizes information about anything that might improve survival. Odds for aircrew facing daily exposure to combat conditions were small. Advantages determine who returns to base and who becomes another statistic in casualty reports that headquarters tries to minimize for morale purposes. Other tail gunners begin requesting technical details about the modification procedure, seeking access to similar periscope equipment, attempting to replicate Eddie's success through their own unauthorized experimentation with salvaged German optics. The unofficial modification program expands rapidly as more gunners discover that German submarine periscopes are available through salvage operations, that the technical challenges of installation can be overcome through collective problem-solving and shared expertise, that the combat advantages justify the risks of operating unauthorized equipment that violates established procedures and might result in disciplinary action if discovered by officers who prioritize regulatory compliance over operational effectiveness. Within 3 months, over 40 B-17s in the 8th Air Force are operating with modified tailgun sights based on Eddie's original design, each installation representing individual initiative and mechanical ingenuity applied to solving problems that official channels have failed to address adequately. The improved gunnery effectiveness becomes statistically significant as modified aircraft consistently demonstrate lower vulnerability to fighter attacks, higher success rates in defensive engagements, reduced casualties among aircrew positions that traditional analysis had identified as most exposed to enemy action. Intelligence officers begin noticing patterns in mission reports that suggest something has changed in American defensive capability, that German fighter pilots are encountering unexpected resistance from bomber formations that previously represented predictable targets for experienced pilots flying superior aircraft according to proven tactical doctrine. But statistical improvement attracts official attention from headquarters personnel who want to understand why certain bomber groups are experiencing better survival rates than mathematical models predicted, why German fighter effectiveness appears to be declining against specific American formations, why aircrew confidence seems to be improving despite continued exposure to combat, conditions that previous analysis suggested would produce cumulative psychological deterioration and declining performance over extended tour duration. The investigation reveals widespread use of unauthorized modifications that violate established procedures for aircraft maintenance and equipment installation, that compromise standardization protocols designed to ensure consistent performance across different units and operational theaters, that represent potential safety hazards if the modified equipment fails under combat conditions in ways that standard equipment would not. Official response focuses on regulatory violations rather than operational effectiveness, on procedural compliance rather than combat results, on maintaining institutional authority rather than exploiting field innovations that demonstrably improve mission success rates and aircrew survival. Colonel James Harrison, commanding officer of the 100th Bomb Group, faces the classic military dilemma between supporting innovations that improve combat effectiveness and maintaining institutional discipline that ensures organizational coherence. Eddie's modification represents exactly the kind of individual initiative that military doctrine theoretically encourages, but its unauthorized nature violates the chain of command, protocols that maintain order and prevent potentially dangerous experimentation with equipment whose failure could compromise mission success and aircrew safety. The Periscope modification works, but its success challenges the institutional assumption that effective innovation flows from engineering expertise and authorized testing rather than field experimentation and unauthorized adaptation. The bureaucratic response reveals the fundamental tension between military innovation and military discipline, between encouraging individual initiative and maintaining institutional control, between exploiting successful field modifications and preserving standardization protocols that ensure predictable performance across diverse operational conditions. Authorization of Eddie's modification would establish precedent for unauthorized equipment changes that might encourage other modifications with less beneficial results, potentially compromising safety and operational reliability in pursuit of individual technical preferences that lack proper testing and evaluation. But the combat effectiveness of the modified Periscope sites cannot be ignored. When bomber losses represent both human tragedy and strategic vulnerability that threatens the entire daylight bombing campaign over Europe, the statistical evidence suggests that unauthorized modifications are saving American lives and improving mission success rates in ways that authorized equipment apparently cannot achieve under actual combat conditions. Suppressing the modifications would eliminate proven tactical advantages for reasons that aircrew would interpret as prioritizing bureaucratic convenience over combat effectiveness and survival necessity. The compromise solution involves retroactive authorization of the Periscope modifications combined with systematic testing and evaluation designed to identify safety concerns and operational limitations that field installation might have overlooked. Eddie receives official recognition for innovative thinking and technical expertise, while the unauthorized nature of his original modification is reframed as commendable initiative that should have been channeled through proper procedures but nevertheless produced beneficial results that merit official adoption and wider distribution. The Periscope modification program expands under official auspices, with engineering teams designing standardized installation procedures that maintain the tactical advantages of Eddie's original concept while ensuring consistent performance and safety standards across different aircraft and operational conditions. German submarine periscopes become priority salvage items, with specific procurement procedures established for acquiring and distributing the optical equipment to bomber groups throughout the European theater. Training programs developed to teach gunners how to exploit the enhanced capabilities that the modified sites provide. The impact extends beyond individual aircraft or bomber groups to influence the broader evolution of American aerial gunnery doctrine and equipment development. The success of Eddie's unauthorized modification demonstrates that field innovation can solve tactical problems faster than institutional research and development. That enlisted personnel possess technical expertise and operational insight that formal engineering processes often overlook. That effective military technology emerges from synthesis of combat experience and technical capability, rather than purely theoretical analysis of design requirements. Post-war analysis reveals that the Periscope modifications contributed to measurable reduction in bomber losses during the final 18 months of the European Air War. That improved gunnery effectiveness forced German fighter tactics to evolve in ways that reduced their overall effectiveness against American formations. That enhanced defensive capability enabled sustained daylight bombing, operations that might otherwise have required prohibitive casualty rates or tactical modifications that would have compromised strategic bombing objectives. Eddie Kowalski returns to civilian life as a machinist in Detroit, where he applies the same combination of technical expertise and innovative thinking to automotive manufacturing challenges that benefit from precision engineering and creative problem-solving. But he carries the knowledge that his stupid Periscope modification saved American lives, improved combat effectiveness, and demonstrated that effective innovation often emerges from unauthorized experimentation by individuals who understand operational requirements better than institutional authorities realize. The German submarine Periscope that Eddie rescued from a salvage pile becomes the foundation for systematic improvements in American aerial gunnery that influence post-war aircraft design, training doctrine, and equipment development priorities. The modification that began as unauthorized field expedients evolves into standard operating procedure that reflects lessons learned through combat experience rather than theoretical analysis, practical necessity rather than engineering perfection, individual initiative rather than institutional planning. Decades later, when military historians analyze the factors that enabled American strategic bombing success over Europe, Eddie's Periscope modification represents a footnote in official accounts but a crucial example of how innovative thinking by frontline personnel can solve tactical problems that formal research and development processes fail to address adequately. The stupid idea of installing submarine optics on bomber gun turrets demonstrates that effective military technology emerges from synthesis of available resources and operational necessity rather than purely formal engineering processes and authorized modification procedures. The lesson persists through subsequent conflicts and technological developments. That innovation emerges from unexpected sources. That individual initiative can solve problems that institutional processes cannot address. That effective military technology requires synthesis of combat experience and technical capability rather than purely theoretical analysis of design requirements. Eddie's Periscope modification reminds us that stupid ideas sometimes represent exactly the kind of creative thinking that transforms impossible problems into manageable challenges. If stories like this remind you that innovation often emerges from unauthorized experimentation by individuals who understand operational requirements better than institutional authorities realize, that effective solutions sometimes violate established procedures in pursuit of results that matter more than regulatory compliance, then perhaps there are other moments of creative problem-solving worth remembering, worth celebrating, worth carrying forward into whatever challenges require us to choose between following established procedures and finding better ways to accomplish essential objectives.